Being an entrepreneur is a lifestyle. It's not a profession. Hi, everyone. Good morning, or rather good afternoon. Today we have someone very special with us. Hi, Neiharika. Welcome to Inspi-her.
Hi, Deeksha. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. And in fact, I think given the time and the circumstance that we live in terms of this pandemic, what Neiharika is doing is very relevant. The entire concept here is to get to know the founder and the story behind why she started out. So Neiharika, would love to know a little bit about your background and your story of transition from, I know you worked at biggies like Dell and McKinsey, to of course now heading Suvida. So over to you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Deeksha. I think my journey has been a little bit, I would say, of the path not walked on much because my undergrad was in sociology. So back in the day, starting off with, a background like that and getting into the business world was interesting. But I think it's always afforded me a different perspective. And hence, I know you and I have also had conversations about diversity in the workforce beyond just gender representation, but even different backgrounds. So yeah, so from there on, worked in financial services in India, worked in sales, private wealth, then worked with the payer side, so worked with Max Life Insurance, product and product training, went to the States, worked with a large hospital system, and then went ahead and did my second MBA in strategy consulting, worked with McKinsey and then Dell. So I led cybersecurity, global marketing for them worldwide at Dell, and then I was chief of staff, which was more like an operational role for their very large enterprise desktop business, which was about $9 billion in revenue. So it was very interesting being the non sort of engineer, female representation on the team as well. And I think that, along with the fact that while I was living away from my family was always on my mind. And then unfortunately I saw that my aunt had pancreatic cancer, and that's when I realized that how important it is to have family in India, because in India the operations and the case management system in hospitals is fairly broken. So there's no one who is representing or being an advocate for the patient. The hospitals, unfortunately, are representing their own interest. Fair enough. But if your family cannot be there, then what do you do? With all of us living in different cities, sometimes different countries even, and busy work schedules, that's what sort of got me to look at that, why is it that there isn't somebody who is addressing this out-of-home care need, which is more like a health, relationship manager figuring out everything outside of home. And that was the genesis of Suvida. I think that, along with the fact that I was myself a mom, by that time I realized that, how important I started to feel it would be for me to also be closer to my family. So I decided to come back home, come to India and help solve this for many like me in whichever way I can. So that was Suvida, yeah.
Wow, I think that's such a beautiful transition that you've kind of put through, right? So from being into finance, working with some of the top institutions, to doing your second MBA. And after all this, I think being sensitive enough to the needs of others, especially the geriatric population in your own home, and then making the shift to actually solve for that is truly commendable. So, Neiharika, what that USP is that Suvida brings. So, if you were to explain Suvida in just a few lines, what would that be?
I would say we are the patient advocates for your family, like an extended family member, helping them, the elderly, figure out the healthcare system in India and making it easier for them while you as a family member stay connected. So it's connectivity, it is convenience, and it is care. So I would put it like that.
So the 3 C's, I think that's super concise. Also another 4th C. So great. So thanks for sharing that with us. And now let's get a bit technical, right? Because another aspect for us to do this is also to bring out the fact that there are enough and many fabulous women like you out there who are not only being able to figure out the problems with the current ecosystem, but are actually actively solving for that, building tech companies, scaling them up, and I think that's very important to bring out. So I want you to kind of dig a little bit deeper into how, when you started the journey, what is the research, what is the insights that you got, and then how did you take those insights to actually form the business model for Suvida?
Yeah. No, absolutely, Deeksha. I think what's been interesting is that till about the pandemic happened, geriatric care in our country was sort of forgotten. It was a demographic which not many people were talking about. What is interesting though is the elderly, those over 60 are growing at a rate twice as much as those under 60 in our country. So the silver tsunami, as they say worldwide, hit us because we're all living longer, we're all healthier. Our parents, or probably their parents, didn't have to think this through. But we most certainly do. By 2025 in India, there'll be 173 million people over the age of 60. And that is a massive number. So, what has happened thus far, what we realized was, even from a geriatric care perspective, there were two things that were happening. There were some people focused on doing infrastructure development, which is, creating assisted living. Great. I mean, there's always, room for that. But let's be honest, most of us, when we talk to our family members, are not very comfortable parting from their homes in their silver years and going and living in a facility. So while it's an option, it is not the default. What you need to really do, we realized, was make them empowered within their own home. Now, how do we do that, right? How do you give a support system wherever you're at? That support system is there. Now, there are a few organizations that started about 2013-14 is, I think, when we saw the first movement in geriatric care with Portia. But it has been, that was at-home care, right? So nursing care, staffing primarily. And then, of course, the company has broadened it to at-home care on geriatric. What we realized was at home can still be managed. I mean, this is our opinion, that it can be managed because there is a shadow ecosystem with the domestic help, right? In India, it's an unorganized sector which exists. So a lot of times you upskill that set of people that are available. But what do you do when you have to go outside of your home, because that is outside of the comfort zone of the elderly? That's when you really need specialists, and that's a very specific value add. So that is sort of the insight that we went ahead with. Whether it's now there are organizations that are coming in trying to help, fix the OPD process, because people are realizing hospitals are not easy. They are not user friendly in our country, and definitely not from the insurance till the end. But what we believe in is that technology can augment it, and we will talk about Suvida's tech ecosystem for sure, but technology can only optimize and augment. A healthcare service delivery has to have a human touch, and definitely for the geriatric population. I mean, I don't foresee it changing for another 20 years for that population set. You and I were changing, by the time maybe when we 60, it could be slightly different, but not in the immediate future. So Suvida sort of marries these two. We believe that the tech ecosystem was essential to our organization. One, to give transparency. B, to optimize deployment. And three, to also have patient health record system development. What we also realized was, with the elderly, a lot of the times, so many, records are there, and they are just all over the place.
Yeah.
And to have the best optimal, sort of best-in-class care, you will have your doctors ask you for those. And if you don't have them, then the care given cannot be the best. So what is it that we can do? So we try to, and so with pick up all of these insights and develop a solution that solves for all of it, right? Because how is it that I ensure that your process to the hospital is easy, or your process with the medical practitioner is easy? Also preventive care, right? I want to make sure you don't have to go again and again. Wow. So I want to make sure that through our process, because you're taking the right steps at the right time and ensuring that the care is getting delivered and all instructions are followed at home, that the results are best, and then the reason for you to go back to the hospital is minimized. So that's sort of where we're coming from.
You said some very important things, and the one thing that I picked up on was humanizing healthcare, right? Yeah. And I love the fact that you said this, because the first venture that I started was the EdTech venture back in 2013. That time the term was not even coined. And I still tell people that EdTech is more about the ed and the people and the stakeholders in education than the tech. And I think I completely agree with you. What you said is actually very practical, right? there are old people in our families and outside who don't understand the way, like you said, hospital processes work or patient records work, right? So to get someone who's experienced enough in a very, very, you can say, structured manner is definitely the need of the hour. So if I was to start defining, the entire customer journey from when someone actually logs on to the Suvida platform or actually signs up, if you could take us through the various steps, and of course on the way also explain what technology, what checkpoints. I do know you've done a lot of quality checks too, so would love to know about those things.
Absolutely. So, what the Suvida ecosystem does is, one, that the service delivery is going to be utilized by the elderly, right? I mean, but someone like you and I, that's how we sort of onboard our parents, because the technology part comes in from where you would want to stay connected. You'd want to know where they're at, what's going on, who's there. So the tech system is such that as a user, which is someone like you and I, we onboard our parents, we give all the information. At Suvida, we try to take as much information as possible because it helps us deliver the best care. For example, we even ask, does the care recipient need a wheelchair? Because we then will account for more time. We know this person will take more time in and out of the facility, in and out of the house. We also have checkpoints from our care managers. So we call the care delivery folks care managers, and we work with the armed forces. So this was also another thing that we felt very strongly about: upskilling and redeploying veterans back into the economy, and then giving them a skill set which is scalable and adds value. So most of the care managers that we have, we keep them over the age of 45, because we feel that's a good set which is close enough to have empathy. There's also patience, which is very important, and of course we're giving them employment opportunities. So the care managers have a skill set, sort of a checklist that they need to get through before they start the visit, which ensures that your whole process is fine. The last thing you need is an elderly person forgetting their insurance card, forgetting their records, forgetting to take the money. This happens, right? Oh, I forgot. It happens all the time, because as we already know, the older the patient is, memory also starts being impacted. So all of these things help, and then through the care process, you as a user will start seeing, okay, XYZ is going to get deployed to the visit for my parents 24 hours from hence. So we have a system wherein we request that the visits are booked 24 hours ahead. We are not into emergent care, because that goes into the urgent and emergent care window, which also means that medical decisions need to be taken. So at this point in time, what we ensure is we make the process easy. We are a step away from emergent care. This is something we'll get into, but for now, it is regular checkups, and it's also any of your outpatient surgeries and post-op care. So with that, you will see throughout what is happening. The care manager goes in through the process. They will keep giving you updates. So you will start seeing updates that they've reached the hospital, they've met with the doctor, and at the end of the business day, once they drop your parent back home, you will also see that the visit is completed. And if there were any medications, then they will upload the medication reminders. And at the end of the business day, any prescriptions, any x-ray records. And the biggest thing I think that we've really realized is, in India, physicians give care instructions verbally. So, they will say, do not eat this, take a walk, but that's not written down in your prescription. Prescriptions have medications. So we capture any of these verbally given care instructions as well. That's a KPI of your care manager, and that is also added on, so that when you see it, you also know my mom is now not supposed to step out of the house, for example, because whatever. So we ensure that. So that bit of information which was thus far left to the patient to recall is now translated and captured.
This was great, and of course, it looks like you've completely hit it right. But that's not what entrepreneurship is. I'm sure you've faced so many challenges, so many hurdles, and I want you to address this from 2 points of view, right? One, just the sector itself, because it is a very, very tough sector. Yes. And second, being a female tech co-founder, that also comes with its own set of challenges. Yes. And I do want you to highlight on some of those.
Definitely. So for healthcare, yes, it's hard, because healthcare till the pandemic hit, everybody said this is not going to happen to me. it's a great idea. I may or may, I'm fine.
I agree.
We always had this sort of sense of immortality, oddly enough, that nothing's going to happen to me, it happens to other people. These are things that we hear, and my family will be there and I'll be there. I mean, we definitely saw an uptake, but this was also, I would say, from a consumer perspective. Post the pandemic, I think people have realized you put money nowhere else, but you prioritize your healthcare, because health is wealth and health is life. So I think that's been a shift, which unfortunately, it had to be something so large for people to understand, but it has been that's been there. The second part of it is healthcare, like most other places also, because you are a part of a value chain, you have to fit into what makes sense for other people too. So it's not a standalone thing, it's not e-commerce direct to direct, right? Like, I mean, once I'm interacting, I have multiple stakeholders. So for example, any hospital that I'm taking you to, if it's a large hospital, ideally I would want to do my due diligence and understand the best processes there, so that my delivery of service to you is better, right? So I know how to best navigate that. Now that's also been, I won't say very challenging, but it was a stakeholder that I had not thought of when I got into it. I thought, oh, it's a consumer business. So the more you sort of get into the layers of it, I think you start realizing that. And patient health records, I think in India, the concept of, again, last year when we started it, people didn't understand it. And interestingly enough, this year NHS has come out with the National Health Stack. And, so we were like, great, we were on the right path. We were not completely off, because this needs to be done. There is no other way that this can be done without it. So I think that's been great too, but it was something that we needed to educate a lot of people on. So healthcare ended up being a little educational, which is interesting for me. The second part now, yes, I think you and I have had enough coffee conversations on this, but this must be the same theme. So I'll talk about a couple of things. One is, as female entrepreneurs, people assume more often than not that I am either in lifestyle or in HR or
100%.
or in a mother wellness related thing, like oh, I'm a mom, so I must be doing a mom related product, or like like a fashion product, which is fine. But then I think you do not expect every engineer to just engineers are also business founders, and they get into anything, and male engineers, and it's not a question, so that's always that's been a weird thing for me, that why is it that you chose this sector. The second part I would say is being a mom. So the question I have heard from folks is, how will you manage when you have a kid? And it's a fair enough question, but I think it also needs to come from a good place, not when you're already coming with a bias. Pandemic said, interestingly enough, even in the US, right, 900,000 women dropped out of the workforce compared to 125,000 men last month itself. So this has been exceptional. But before this, I think everybody has a system. So you have to believe that as an entrepreneur, I'm sitting across the table from you, I've got my system figured out. You do not have to question me. I'm not questioning yours. So I think
100%. I completely agree.
Yes, and I think that's a little frustrating, because that's another hoop I need to jump on top of everything else that I'm trying to convince you that, oh yeah, but I have a kid, but that's not going to stop me. So I think that's that. And then as a female entrepreneur, yes, I've also been asked my personal relationship status, and I think that's none of anyone's business.
So absolutely.
Certain times I think it comes from a place of, they assume if you have a spouse, and if your spouse's work will take precedence over yours. Again, I think irrelevant question. Those are things I need to figure out at my home. It's not going to show up at my work. I'm a professional and you need to trust me. And if that basic trust cannot come up, then I do not know. Also, if you have a child, irrespective of whether you have a family, irrespective of you're a female or a male, I think any investor, and this is just my call out to investors, I think need to understand that I need to have a stable or a rather happy home life as well. Because if you think I'm never going to take off because my kid is sick, that is unrealistic. What are we talking about, right? So the funny thing is, if I may put it this way, I've even written on LinkedIn about it. Maybe it's a little blasphemous, but investors ask us to build scalable businesses and sustainable businesses, right? These are the two.
Absolutely.
But the effort from an entrepreneur is not sustainable, expected, and you are expected to be at 110 the first day, so it's not scalable. Where am I going to go from 110? And usually in the first few years of the business, the entrepreneur is the business. Unfortunately, that's how it is. So if you're asking me to burn out, but build a business that doesn't burn out, I don't know how that functions, So I feel like people need to bet on entrepreneurs for the longer time and believe that if I am happy at home, I'm going to be happy at work. And that's what I try to do with my employees and team members too. I always ask them what's at home, because that is also going to tell me if you're off a certain day. Similarly with investors, I think that's an important ask, that try to understand, male or female, that we have lives outside of work. This is my passion, this is my dream, but this is not all me, and it shouldn't be, because that's not healthy. So I don't know if it's not the exact right thing to say, but I think that's at least how I view it.
I also feel that the ecosystem is changing for the better, right? But it requires people like you to come forward and talk about what great businesses that they are building, and you being a male or female actually has no relevance to how well you do as an entrepreneur, right? And that's the agenda of kind of bringing this out. Neiharika, my last question to you, and not a question, but I can see the passion flowing. I can see how tough it's been to actually sustain in a sector like healthcare, to build the tech around that, and to of course go through all of those inherent biases that come with the fact of you being a female entrepreneur, but you've still sustained and you're still growing strong. So what's that one startup mantra for you, or what's that one thing that keeps you going? And I'm sure that it's going to inspire so many others.
So I think it'll be two. One is, and it's easier said than done, there are many times that I have to remind myself of it, is be kind to yourself. I think we're kinder to other people than we are to ourselves. And I think that's very important, because in being an entrepreneur, you're supposed to be critical. You're supposed to be critical of what you're doing. Of every day, you're supposed to question why you're doing it, what is a better way, and you're defending what you're doing to the world, right? So, but it's okay to have days where you don't know stuff. I think you and I have also had those conversations, and every entrepreneur needs that support ecosystem wherein they have that. But just remind yourself it's okay. And the second thing is, like, when people say, I truly believe when they say it's a marathon, not a sprint. I have another way of calling it. I say it's be an eagle, not Icarus. So an eagle can consistently be the highest and fly for a very long time like that. But if you go too high or you push yourself too much, then you crash and burn. So I think those are the two things I remind myself, at least, when it comes to work. So yeah.
Perfect, because being an entrepreneur is a lifestyle, it's not a profession. I keep kind of letting them know. Neiharika, thank you so much for sharing all of this with us and inspiring so many others. It's so heartening to see that you're out there making a difference, pulling every day through. And anyone here who's listening, who either wants to explore healthcare as a sector, or just wants to maybe talk to Neiharika, understand what her challenges were. If you are facing something similar, we're also trying to build a great support system, a great ecosystem. Please reach out to her. I know her personally too, and she's such a lovely person. And again, once again, thank you so much, Neiharika.
Thanks so much, Deeksha. Thanks for having me, and look forward to the other entrepreneurs and learning from their journeys as well.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks.